Today I'm going to be talking about why I love Professor Jordan B. Peterson. A few weeks ago on my Instagram, I posted a picture of Jordan B. Peterson at McMaster University, and in the caption I called him a hero. And a few people who are also trans DM'd me asking me why I called him a hero. And basically everything in this video is what I told them. And while they didn't really agree with me that they'd call him a hero, they did kind of see my point. So first I'm going to offer some background for those of you who may not know who Jordan Peterson is. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian clinical psychologist and a psychology professor at the University of Toronto. About 7 months ago on his YouTube channel, he made a video criticizing Bill C-16, which is a bill that modified the Human Rights Code in Canada, adding gender identity and gender expression, one of the aspects that is illegal to discriminate against. This demands that it is illegal to use pronouns that the person does not identify with. So if a person asks you to use they, them, and you don't use they, them, you can be fined up to $250,000. And Dr. Jordan B. Peterson found a really big problem with that. So he uploaded the videos on his YouTube channel, and it created a huge uproar, a ton of media coverage. A lot of people just read headlines that said, like, transphobic professor refuses to use the correct pronouns for his trans students, and immediately turned against him. And I will admit that I did the same thing. But after looking into it a lot more, here is why I am fully in support of Jordan Peterson. The thing about those who protest him and go to his talks and try to shut him down is that they don't listen. I'll admit that when I first heard the surface of his initial controversy, I thought that he was narcissistic and ignorant. Here's the thing. This is not an issue of trans rights. I don't live in Canada, so this bill doesn't affect me, but the same kind of thing is happening in the States too. Jordan Peterson is living proof that free speech is necessary, no matter what. He is not a bigot, and he is not transphobic. An overwhelming majority of the letters of support that he receives are from trans people like me, who are deeply disturbed by the growing Marxist ideas of the regressive left. These protesters have absolutely no right to speak for all trans people, just as a single white man does not have the right to speak for all white men. Peterson is much more articulate in describing this. When I watched the footage of the McMaster University event, where he was forced to go outside because all the protesters were drowning him in incoherent noise, one of the people who were in support of Peterson said, "If only you could hear what he was saying." And I think that pretty much sums it all up. The truth is, the more you try to silence him, the louder he's gonna get. But unfortunately, there's no way to get people to listen to him if they're not willing to. That's up to them. For those of you who are disagreeing with me and think that he's transphobic, I would highly recommend watching some of his videos and maybe try to consider what you may describe as transphobic remarks, even though I've never heard a single transphobic thing come out of his mouth, that they may make some sense. Like, perfect, honest sense. Maybe just try to consider what message he's trying to send. I guarantee you it's not that transgender and non-binary people aren't real. The people who protested him at McMaster are anti-free speech. And as Jordan Peterson said, the alternative to free speech is violence. Now personally, since I'm an agreeable person, I will use any gender-verifying language that you want. I, however, do not think that misgendering someone should be illegal. Even if someone were to misgender me and call me ma'am over and over and over again, I would be very annoyed, but I wouldn't want any legal action to be taken against them. However, that's besides the point here. That seems to be what all the people on the other side try to talk about, but they're completely missing the target. I am not at all saying that people don't get to be upset or hurt by some of the things that he said. Now, since I'm not non-binary, I don't really know what it's like to be... Well, I know what it's like to be misgendered, but just in a different way. So what? He said something that you disagree with and offends you. What do? Should he not be allowed to elaborate on his views due to the chance that a small number of people might get angry? Why are we trying to create some sort of social utopia? We're never going to be equal. Ever. There is absolutely nothing that works about a completely equal society. Liberals and conservatives need each other. And this is not my original idea. A lot of this I'm pulling from Jordan Peterson's ideas. And free speech, even though at times it may be very unpleasant, is the mechanism in which we keep our society functioning.
Can you bring the dog out, please?
This is why trans people are getting killed and abused. Misgendering is not violence. I'm sorry. It's just not. And if you disagree with Peterson, then question him, debate him, challenge him. Don't try to shut him down, for Christ's sake. You're not a victim. Listen to him and actually take in his point of view. Don't back down on your views, but at the same time, don't try to get him to back down on his. Now, there are people who are respectfully debating him and being rational. And one of the other things that I really respect about Jordan Peterson is that, from what I can observe, he's actually listening to them, and he's not just discrediting whatever they're saying to being hyper politically correct. And when he responds to these reasonable protesters who may be non-binary, he acknowledges that he doesn't totally understand the issue. And he hasn't really spoken on the issue with any sort of authority or objectivity. And he does the same thing with Islam. He's been studying it for a few years now, but he still recognizes that you should talk about an issue if you know what the hell you're talking about. I personally find it very annoying when people on the anti-SJW side try to speak about a topic such as Islam using logic and facts, when it's obvious that they're just talking about how the subject makes them feel. I see a ton of people using it, like Hunter Avallone, Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, all those guys. But in my opinion, I think the term political correctness has lost its meaning. And yes, while there are people who are respectfully debating him, people who are actually trying to silence him are much louder. And they make the entire trans community look awful. If you claim to speak for an entire group, and you act like an actual child, you are going to make the entire group look bad. But at the same time, we're putting way too much faith in the idea of the power of the group rather than the power of the individual. So his remarks, they make people angry. Okay, so that's understandable, and I can totally empathize with that. So there are a few options about what can be done about that. And as far as I can tell, we have three. Option A, we can completely abolish the source that caused the negative emotion and never let it speak on the topic ever again. B, we can just change our minds and let others decide what happens. Or C, we can have an open and honest discussion and try to come to some sort of consensus. Despite the way that people behave, I think that most people would go with option C. And to elaborate on something that I said about the protesters acting like children, I'm not trying to say a smartass when I say that. The protesters are behaving literally like 2-year-olds. 2-year-olds are completely uncivilized and don't know how to voice what they want in an articulate and reasonable manner. And that's why we tell toddlers to use their words instead of throwing tantrums. It really is kind of the same thing here. It's very dangerous that so many universities are telling students that the most important thing is their feelings. You need to challenge yourself in order to make the change that you want to see. This does not come easy. You need to suffer and build endurance, and you need to get tough, but in a controlled manner. So that pretty much sums up how I feel about him. I'm very glad that I ventured into that hellhole. As I said, an open and honest discussion about these kind of things is very, very good. So if you want to debate me or tell me that I'm wrong, please do so in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.